Welcome, everyone. I am so excited today because we are talking with a dear friend of ours about embedding a culture of innovation. So first, please let me introduce myself. I'm Kat Nadell. I am the head of content and social media, and I'm so excited to introduce our co-founder, Philip Horvath. Hey, Philip.
Hello.
Welcome. And Philip is our co-founder and culture catalyst. He is also a speaker and a facilitator, and he works with leaders to create operating systems at a planetary scale. And welcome also our longtime friend, Cris Beswick. Welcome, Cris.
Hi, guys.
Cris is a keynote speaker on innovation, and he's also a strategic advisor. And my favorite is the co-author of Building a Culture of Innovation. So welcome to both of you. And again, today our topic is going to be embedding a culture of innovation. Because let's face it, innovation is more than just an idea. It's more than just the technologies that serves the idea. It's about training your people to think innovatively as opposed to doing innovation, so that the organization can step into the new wave of business. And culture is key here. So that's our topic, and I'm going to let you gentlemen take it away.
So much, Kat. And so thank you so much, Cris, for being here today. You know, over the last few years where I've met you in innovation conferences, you were always one of my favorite people to hang out with at the bar after the talks and, you know, drink a couple of pints and actually have a conversation about what's really going on with culture. And especially early on, I remember like the early conferences where we met, we were kind of like the weird ones talking about culture in the first place. Everybody else was talking about methods and tools of how to do innovation. And you and I were sitting there going, culture, people? Culture? You know?
Yeah.
And so you remember, right?
Design thinking's okay, but
yeah. You know, you need to have some people wield those tools. You know, I always say, like, if you have a bunch of dehydrated people who don't know how to talk to each other and don't know how to really tap into your genius, you can put them in the room with the best tools and a pile of Post-its, and it's going to be crap. You might as well take your Post-its and light them on fire, and all the money you spent on that design sprint on top of it. So I've always really enjoyed talking with you there, and I figured, you know, this would be a great opportunity to talk a bit of culture now that it's become a bit more of a topic. And I'm curious if you've noticed that too, that in the last year in particular, as people are realizing that work is changing suddenly, culture has actually risen in its, attention. And it's not just a little checkbox that you check anymore, but people are actually beginning to be curious about culture. So I'm interested to see, you know, how your experience has been over the last year and years in terms of how culture has evolved.
Yeah. I mean, just on that, I think not necessarily a culture of innovation, but definitely culture over the last year or 18 months, I suppose, nearly, you know, won't be far off 18 months. It's probably made, you know, it's been the make or break for some companies, I think. Just culture in general, and you know, how people have been treated and how they've been not managed in the traditional sense, but how businesses have managed how they treat people and how they've tried to maintain collaboration and energy and all of those things has been, I think, a real eye-opener for a lot of organizations in terms of, one, how valuable it is to productivity and creativity and all those things, but also just in terms of how valuable and important it is. Just, I think the well-being part of culture is what has been the real sort of wake-up moment for a lot of organizations, and I think they've realized how much a part of culture that is, and how probably they probably undervalued it before. You know, and as you know, when we're talking about innovation and creativity and things like that, that mental fitness, mental well-being, you know, mental health, being positive, creative, all of those are the precursors to innovation. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed over the past year or so.
That's a good point. I think it's to focus on humans, right? And to remember that we're not here to serve organizations, we're not here to serve economies, but they're here to serve us. Right? And if you think about even culture, for me, it's fundamentally, it's not this like weird ephemeral thing over here, but it's your operating system, is how you operate as an organization. right? And how you create your opus, how you create the value, the work that you put out in the world. That's for me the kind of like, that's why it's always been starting to me that people talk about culture as sort of a separate thing, you know, rather than understanding this is how you do things around here.
Yeah.
Right? This is really the fundamental way of how to create value together. And so
yeah, and I think I'm trying to rack my brains now to think of. I read something today on this, and I'll try and find it before we finish if I can. But it was about how we need to revalue human capital and revalue the value, or like recorrelate the value of people to organizations. And if we take that in the context of innovation, right? People innovate, companies don't. Yet we, so the thing that I read today was about revaluing human capital. And like, if anyone's listening and they've read the same thing, don't shoot me on the numbers, but it was something like 50% or something. It might have even been more. It was a number, and I thought, oh, holy crap, this is significant. And it was human capital and culture make up a disproportionate amount of an organization's value. And yet we still, and I'm not tarnishing every organization with the same brush, but we still look at people as just human assets or resources, right? You know, I've, you know, for the past decade, I've championed and tried to say, you know, I've been well known for saying we need to get rid of human resources and start calling it the human beings department. It's HB, not HR, right? And when you read these statistics about the value that people and culture have on the balance sheet, on the value of an organization, we need to take it more seriously. And if innovation is an outcome of that culture, then, you know, corporates need to wake up.
So, you know, I think if you think about payroll, I mean, it's the biggest part of your cost, right, as an organization. So, you know, I always say human resources is not about managing resources, it's about resourcing humans, right? And it's really about the humans in the first place, right? Because the better they function, the more they can bring to the table. And another kind of horrid statistic I read the other day was that about 70% of people cover or engage in some form of covering and hiding when they come to work, right? Because they're treated as a job function, they're treated as an employee who does a particular thing, but they're not treated as humans who have a body, who have emotions, who have a genius and creativity. Yeah. And if you think about that, if I take my balance sheet and I look at, you know, what my expenses, and I look at, you know, how much of that is payroll, and if I'm assuming that 70% of people are not really bringing their full self to work, that's a tremendous amount of wasted money. What if I'm hiring someone to be a human being, like you said, in my organization, and they come in and show up as a human resource, just ticking the boxes of what's in their job description, I'm losing out on all this creativity and genius that you could bring to bear. But especially if I want to become innovative, and this is, you know, coming to our topic of culture of innovation, I don't have access to that resource, right? And I don't even have that human there if I'm not allowing them to be human in the first place. Right? And, you know,
but here's the thing, right? At CEO and senior level, here's the conversation I have around that. Whose fault is it, right? And it's very easy to say, oh, well, you know, our people should be engaged. We're spending all this money on engagement programs and blah, 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 right? And when you unpack all that, you know, and I just sort of, you know, that thing that you shouldn't do when your wife phones you and you just sort of do that for half an hour. Just sort of do
or
that.
Your husband,
or your husband, or your life partner, or whatever, right? But in my case, and she's not here, so I can say. But you know, you just think, look, I'm just going to switch off for 15 minutes while you throw all this stuff at me and all these excuses. The reality is, if I'm a leader in an organization where that is happening, it's my fault. It's not the employee's fault. It's not my manager's fault. It's my fault. And the challenge is, I find, even advising at that level with boards and senior teams, there is not enough like humble accountability, right? It's my fault, right? That is my problem. I need to sort that out. And the irony is, and you mentioned human centricity earlier. Organizations all over the planet are spending millions and millions of dollars on things like outcome-driven innovation, design thinking, etc. They are all human-centered approaches. So we're teaching our people to use frameworks and tools in the vain hope that it makes them understand customers better. It makes them understand other humans better. So we're teaching them to use human-centered ways of looking at problems, but we don't design our organizations to be human-centric. So we want people to use a tool and a skill and a framework and a way of working to solve problems to generate growth. But at the top of the organization, we're not saying, okay, but if we want that down here and we want people to use that, how do we redesign our organization so that our organization itself is fundamentally human-centered? And I don't see enough of that.
Super funny. Actually, I always think it's like, customer centricity starts with employee centricity, right? As you said, it's human centric. It's like, and I've met design thinking teachers even who couldn't look you in the eye. And I'm like, how can you talk about empathy and design thinking when you can't actually connect with me as a human? You know what I mean? Yeah. And they had all the best tools and the best methods and everything, but they didn't have the human capacities. And this is, I think, where that temptation for the quick fix, for the panacea is always to just like buy the tool. Let's just buy the tool. Right, by the method, by the thing, because that's safe, right? Yeah. Versus if I look at what develop my humans, then it gets really messy, very quickly, because humans are a bit messy, right? I mean, we wish we had, all sanitized relationships with each other, and we're still trying that in some ways, but human relationships tend to be a bit messy, right? And it's really about changing the mindset there so that we can do innovation and not just expect them to now use these tools that they have no connection with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I read. I've done a lot of reading today, and I read something else. And in fairness, it was partly it was spurred on by your. I can't remember how you did it, but it was spurred on by the conversation that you two had yesterday, where Kat, you were saying, oh, I'm really stressed out. I've got the kids and I've got this. And it's like, oh, when do I get 2 minutes for me, or something around along those lines? And you replied, Philip, and you just went, well, you got to do these things, right? Like get up in the morning and just like stretch and just take a breath and just go, do you know what? It's not selfish. Just 2 minutes for me, and it was something that I can't remember the exact words, but you'll remember the conversation. And I got up this morning and I just thought, me and Nikki are just going to go for a run. So, there's stuff to do and there's emails and there's clients and all that. But, we dropped the kids off at school and then we just went out for an hour and a half. And I don't know, we ran about, 7 or 8K or something, nothing mind blowing, but it was like fresh air. It's a nice day. We cruised back in, put the coffee machine on, and it's like the emails are still there. No, the phone's not ringing. No one's panicking. But that was an hour of let's just go for a run.
Yeah, the work's not going anywhere. Yeah, it was a LinkedIn post exactly on that, that we are humans, not to serve some function of an organization or to serve our partners or to serve our kids, right? Like we actually need to serve ourselves, or else
in order to do that.
Exactly.
In order to do those things.
There's a direct correlation with how much capacity I have for myself in respect to how much I can actually offer and give.
That was what you said. That was it. It was how the capacity I have for others is directly correlated to the capacity I give myself, or something like that. And thinking about that culturally, right? What capacity does an organization have to give stuff like that to its people in order? Here's the thing about innovation, and I'm guilty of this, and we all are to some extent. Innovation for me is an outcome, right? It's the result. It's the end result of lots and lots and lots of pieces fitting together. And I have another phrase which I'm constantly cheesed off with, how many organizations still self-profess they are innovative, right? So I created this little thing that basically says, innovation is only a badge that can be bestowed upon us by our customers. right? And what I mean by that is, just because we as an organization create a new widget or a new product or an experience, we can't automatically go, check out our latest innovation, right? Innovation doesn't work like that, right? Otherwise, we would all be innovative, therefore nobody is, right? So we have to validate our creativeness by other people going, wow, that thing that Lumen have just done, that is off the scale, right? I've never been on a program like that. You know, the workshop, the facilitate, like different than everything else I've done, right? That's then, and here's the thing. If that client says that thing that Lumen just did, that thing they've just launched, super innovative. Or if they go, that thing that Lumen just launched, absolutely amazing. We're now going to roll the whole thing out across our whole global organization. Same result. They didn't use the word innovation, but it's the same result, right? The outcome is collective creativity, genius, insight, empathy, all of those things to create something that whoever had the problem or the need says, that is just absolutely fantastic. And we've lost sight with that in favor of, we've just rolled some crap out, let's stick innovation on the title and it'll be great. And we have to get back to fundamentally understanding what innovation is, i.e. it's an outcome, it's an end result, and it's the results that we're after. And several of the core things that requires are human-centeredness, empathy, creativity, loads of stuff like that. And here's the challenge with that when we look at an organization's culture. There is no organization on the planet that can contractually, as part of your job role and your contract with the organization, make you be creative. You cannot contractually make someone give you their creativity. It has to be what I call a willing contribution, i.e., as a person in an organization, I'm inspired by my leadership team. We have a brilliant culture. I absolutely love what we do. I absolutely, without question, want to deliver against our purpose. I believe that we're going to make the world a better place and we're doing better things for customers, et cetera, et cetera. In that environment, psychological safety, all of those things have to be there. In that environment, as a person, I will willingly challenge the status quo, take risk, be creative, suggest things that I think could be done better, all of those things. Without that environment, that willing contribution is very, very difficult for me to give an organization. And without that willing contribution, innovation is impossible.
I love how you said it. I agree that innovation is the final outcome, right? And even there, it means to introduce something new, which means there has to be a market acceptance, which means unless that customer is there, you didn't close the loop. And you're starting off with, as you said, all these baseline things first to create that, right? And really to allow that to happen. Like you said, creativity is not something you can just turn on command and say, oh, go be creative now, I paid you, right? But it's something that you have to foster the environment for. Right?
Yeah, you know, we've put a meeting in your diary we have a 2-hour slot on Friday the 30th, and in that slot we must solve this problem, right? Bring your creativity. I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say, right? Bring your creativity just for that specific 2 hours. Yeah, and then you can turn it off. We don't need it after that.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. We go back to filling out the forms afterwards, right? But for 2 hours, you get to be human, right?
That's it. It's just crazy. But, you know, that the human-centeredness we talked about earlier, that's the bit where the better we get at that as organizations, the more and deeper we understand people, the more and the deeper we understand customers and society and markets and all those things. And the more and the deeper we understand them, the deeper and the more valuable the problems are that we unearth. And ultimately what we want as organizations is value in one way, shape or form. We can never get away from the fact that an organization is always going to want to return to shareholders in some capacity, right? And the deeper the problem, the more likely it's a higher value one, because it's probably more painful, and more systemic. And if we can use that willing contribution and that genius and that creativity and collaboration and all of those ingredients, if all of that, though, that's the recipe for the dish that is the outcome that ultimately then gets labeled innovation. And the more systemic, the deeper it is, the higher the value of the problem. And if we can solve those as organizations, that's how we grow, and that's how organizations shape the future. That's the bit we have to get better at. The tools to do that are the easy bit. They're almost off the shelf: design thinking, outcome-driven innovation, lean, agile, software. Right? We've got all those now. What we have to do as organizations is figure out how we lead them in the right way, and then how we inspire people to give us that willing contribution and use all those tools to give us the outcomes that we really want. That's the challenge. The tools bit's been done now. We've got them all. The tool set's there broadly, right? Building environments where people willingly want to use them for the greater good is the leadership challenge of the next decade.
So in that, what is something, I mean, I think most people would actually agree with all the things we've said, but how do I get my arms around it? Right? Like if I'm a leader in an organization right now and I'm like, yeah, man, look, this Cris said, he's like, yeah, we have to be human-centric. I want to be more human-centric. What do? Do I just, hire the big five people to come in and just like do a organizational transformation for me? We need to now be human-centered, make that happen. Or like, how do I even get started? How do I best get my arms around this?
Yeah, you could bring in one of the big global consultancies if you want, but it depends how off the shelf you view your organization, right? If you just, if you want an end-to-end predictable off the shelf thing, then fine. But the reality is organizations are like humans, right? We're all completely different. Organizations have different makeup. If you use the analogy of a body, they're a different size, they're a different shape, they have different agility, they have a different chemical makeup, they respond to different inputs. Organizations are amorphous, they're alive, and you have to really understand the organism that an organization is in order to be able to say, this is the right solution, and this is the right fit, and this is the right way of communicating with it, and this is the right, tempo and pace to do something in this organization. There isn't a one size fits all for transformation around innovation. There just isn't. And the challenge with a lot of innovation transformation programs is that they have typically been sort of one size fits all. And as we know from all of the reports and the stats every year, I don't know, whatever the figure is, again, don't shoot me on the number, but 70, 80% of them fail or whatever it is. It's a massively high number because you're trying to fit square pegs in round holes, to use that analogy. We have a tool, so we measure innovation maturity, right? So we built a tool about 4 or 5 years ago, which called AIM. So it's short for, it's not terribly creative for an innovation company, but the assessment for innovation maturity, and just purely fortuitously, it spells AIM, right? Yeah. So we dropped Lucky there, but that helps us measure the current state of both innovation capability and how embedded that capability is across an organization's culture. The best way to describe why that's valuable is this. And I use the sat nav, or if you're in the US, the GPS analogy. And that analogy is when you get into your car, you turn the ignition on, and the first thing that system does is it triangulates your position. Then you enter a destination and it plots the fastest or the most efficient route to it. What we do as organizations is the opposite. We articulate this view of the future, this future state that we want to become and operate in. And then we go, right, and we're gonna head towards it. But we haven't really triangulated our start point effectively enough. And that's one of the reasons why most of these big transformation programs fail, because the start point, you know, another analogy, if a rocket leaves the Earth and it's off by 1 degree, it misses the moon by 1,000,000 miles, right? Yeah, we've all heard that. And it's the same thing with transforming organizations. We have to know exactly where we start. And many organizations don't put enough effort into saying, where are we today on a granular level? Like, really, where are we across multiple different levels and questions? Where are we? And which bits do we need to solve today? Because transforming an organization is massive, right? But on day one, you might only have to tackle 3 or 4 things. And then you get those sorted and your maturity increases a bit. And then 4, 5, 6 months later, you go, right, now these other things now have become a challenge, but we've sorted those. And the cause and effect now means these things, because we've matured a little bit, and these things are now problems. So let's tackle them. You cannot tackle transformation by saying, we're going to do 60 things over the next 2 years, and we're going to start the majority of them today. It's a journey, and you have to take it in small steps. And AIM basically shows us which of those steps to take at any one time.
I love that about it, because the whole idea of like boiling the ocean is overwhelming, and then it becomes meaningless, right? And you might not have to. I mean, actually, what I do find is when I do work with organizations, a lot of times individual aspects of what they do, they're doing really well already. Exactly. And there's no need to change that or, you know, move everything around, when you only have to change this little thing over here that then will make these things shine and come out. You know, and so
yeah, and the cause and effect is so underrated in organizations. You know, you've got 6 problems, we must solve all 6. Well, actually, if you really unpack them, if we solve that one, these other 2 dissipate. Might not be solved completely, but they dissipate enough that they're not a significant problem at the moment. And it's understanding that cause and effect that takes real expertise and experience. And in my experience, the majority of the big firms don't understand things at that kind of granular level. So that it tends to be, I'm not saying they all boil the ocean, but there's more fixing things that ain't broken, if you like.
And they're large organizations too, so I think they, in a way, suffer from the same thing.
Maybe
there's individual genius there too, but they have the large organization, and so it becomes that generic thing that doesn't really necessarily address the issues anymore. So,
no.
Thank you so much. It was already a delightful conversation. I know we could go on for hours, and I do hope that we're going to get to do this again with a pint in our hands sometimes when, you know, things loosen up, and we'll have conferences again where we get to actually speak with people and meet people and talk to some of the awesome practitioners that we've met over the years and work together. So thank you so much for making time today. And I really, really enjoyed your insights today and your things. We'll also put the link to your assessment tool in the chat here to get you take care of it, right? Awesome.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. And please know we are Lumen, and we build leaders and teams while training in continuous innovation. If you want to reach out to Cris or Philip, I will leave their information in the comments, as well as the innovation assessment. So check that out. And Cris and Philip, such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I also look forward to having a pint with both of you.
Yes.
Wonderful. We'll do that.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
That was really cool.
Awesome.